something. I don't
We
really
we
know.
we might hear soon. I believe I've sent the link. It looks like he's working on it, and he should actually be in there shortly.
Well, we'll see what
Hopefully,
happens.
we're
We'll see
working
what
on it.
happens with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm only going to be here till 9, so I'm only here for 39 minutes. So,
Oh,
we'll
okay.
see. We'll see what happens with that. But nevertheless, I mean, shit, you and Adam could talk. It was mostly you and Adam talking last time, so it's
Oh,
pretty good.
that's a great conversation for all three of us. Was that a thing? You at 9 o'clock tonight? You got an appointment with Zach?
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to be done with this at 9 o'clock all the time, and just kind of sticking to that schedule.
Yeah.
Ideally, trying to start more right at 8, so that I get an hour in there. But either way, if anybody ever wants to hear a lot more from me, you can just engage with me in some other way. I talk a fucking lot, so a lot of my life over recent times has actually been finding ways to fucking talk less, because I waste a lot of my own time by talking about things. And I kind of came to realize, well, over the last year, how it was. While I like talking about things, I actually also do it as a format of self sabotage. So I've been pretty proactively trying to manage my time spent like ranting about shit and soapboxing about shit, and especially trying to minimize tangents inside of conversations, try and get to the point and or circle the wagons a little bit quicker. So yeah,
And
I
we're
think
also
that's
doing
pretty
a
much life is. Like
yeah,
like
that
you
go
build
ahead.
skills, and then you build them too much, and you're like, whoa, I got to chill out on that. Like,
And you're also running a podcast 4 nights a week and trying to talk less, which we have refined it down. It was pretty
yeah.
common going like 3-4 hours, and so it is
In
refined down.
fairness, the
There we
big bit
go.
of my talking is usually actually like with people in real life during the day, especially in the morning.
Mm.
I wake up in the morning, and like it's almost like a morning routine, but sometimes like that routine goes for like way, way, way too long, and next thing I know, it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I've just been like ranting about bullshit the whole time. So not so much. Adam, how's it going, man?
Sounds
What's up,
sounds
Adam?
good to me. I mean, that sounds like a great morning slash afternoon. Going great here.
Yeah, they're not bad, but if you have like whatever tasks you're trying to accomplish or anything like that, they're not productive for that. If I schedule a morning, sometimes I completely fuck the schedule just because I'm like, oh shit, I was supposed to start doing that an hour ago.
Yeah,
Like,
whoops.
So, yeah, I
yeah,
remember. I think it's Eckhart Tolle talking about it, saying if you want to be lazy, just do that. You know what I mean? Just be
yeah,
lazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Huh.
Sometimes I do just want to be lazy. Sometimes I just want to not accomplish shit at all.
Okay, what are you on that topic, Adam? What are ways that you would be lazy?
That I'm lazy.
Yeah.
Oh man, just like lay in bed and just like chill and watch like videos about ancient battles and stuff like that. I love consuming content laying in bed. That's a great way to be lazy. I mean,
So is that they focus your mind is on something that like gets out all the other stuff, like all the stuff we talked about yesterday or whatever, or is that inseparable from whatever you're engaged in?
yeah, it's kind of like that. It's like you want your imagination occupied by a storytelling mechanism, and it's
Yeah.
especially if it's historical, it's something that actually happened. You're hearing like these hundreds of thousands of people clashing together, and like the random crazy shit that goes down to actually accomplish what actually happened in history. I think there's something really interesting about it, but. Yard work's a good way to be lazy, actually, because you get a lot done, and it's not actually lazy.
So
But
what's the
sometimes,
story? What's the storytelling narrative on yard work? You said your mind to be engaged in
yeah,
storytelling.
you're the steward of this land, and you
Cool.
are tasked with upgrading nature. There you go.
Cool, man. Yeah.
And
Hero
with
your own
your
story.
wealth. Yeah, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And you're there with your other hero squad, and they're there helping or whatever. You can get so much done.
Yeah,
Cool.
I think that storytelling narrative definitely makes any experience more engaging. And like if there's no
Yes,
story inside of it, it's all function and just like diagnostics, or like the diagrams. It's not that engaging. It's just informative.
yeah. I mean, there's like Campbell back of however many decades ago, and it evolved into just kind of Hollywood storytelling. Even though this is the whole idea is that this is what makes stories compelling, is that whole monomyth thing, the journey of the hero type of thing. And what are you going to do? You can't really fight nature. It's sort of like music has a certain structure to it, and you can break the rules if you want, but the rules are there because that's what sounds good to human beings.
Yeah.
I wonder if other species they would have a different idea of how to do this story of a hero thing, or if it's just kind of something that is common to conscious beings wherever they may originate.
I had this concept recently, kind of driven by psychedelics, where I was just like exploring the life of like a male black widow spider. And I realized that like their kind of hero's journey is to be like brought forth into the world by some powerful female, be raised up to be able to leave the nest to then basically find another powerful female and sacrifice themselves to that in order to prolong the life of the species. And so their hero's journey actually basically includes purposeful sacrifice at the end of it. And that's definitely
Yeah,
different than a human's.
yeah. I mean, that would be really interesting because we don't have access to their state of mind. So for all intents that at some point that they actually believe that they're going to be fine. They have no clue that they're going to be. Maybe even the Black Widow herself has no clue she's going to be compelled to eat this dude until she's just so hungry after laying her eggs or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe there's no genetic memory that comes into instinct and informs the whole manner of death.
Yeah, I
Could
think
be.
it's very possible too that if it's really truly is their hero's journey, it's not like a thing that's perceived negatively or anything. It's like, all right, we got together, that was amazing. Now we copulated, that was amazing, and now we get to do the sacrifice. This is going to be amazing. I'm
Oh
going to
yeah,
eat your fucking head now. And he's like, yes, I'm going to get my fucking head eaten. This is amazing.
yeah.
You
He
know?
could be. I mean, different cultures, but they've got human sacrifice. And what was the one I just heard about? It was up in I think Kiev. It's the one they did the 13th Warrior about. This is something like 750 AD. I don't remember. I'm getting my date wrong there, but it's the one where they load up the dead king in the boat and send it off and send a fire arrow, and it's
Yeah.
got a slave girl on it who volunteers herself to die because they're both going to be admitted instantly to Valhalla. And he's watching this in horror. The guy who's writing it, he's like from the Middle East somewhere, and that's the 13th. That's the one with Antonio Banderas and all that kind of thing. Pretty cool movie, I guess, on some level until it's also
Yeah.
dumb. But yeah, it's a lot to look at.
Oh, it's also dumb. Yeah.
Most movies. Was that a Michael Crichton book? Is that I
It sounds familiar.
yeah,
I know
that's
he
what
had a few good. Mike Crichton was also in Jurassic Park and some other big ones, right?
Michael Crichton.
Michael
There it
Crichton,
is.
Jurassic Park.
Yes,
I think he
definitely.
did.
And Andromeda Strain and that type of thing. Yeah, 1976 novels, Eaters of the Dead, 13th Warrior. That's pretty cool.
Huh.
Yeah, but that's where we get this whole image of Vikings using that as their method of death, even though that's basically Russia, right? That's not no evidence that that actually happened up in the north, as I was hearing from one of these very informative, I'm sure, YouTube videos. So
Hmm. I think we get a lot of that like confused just because
Yeah.
it came from an area, and sometimes when we do that, like we kind of just set the web a little too big on what the area is. Like it was actually this really
Mm.
small area in Russia, but they were like up there in the north where there's ice and they use boats. You know what I mean? And it's like
yeah,
it ends up
totally.
becoming this huge fucking
But
area.
yeah, like that's not practical in that way. Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. History being kind of twisted and misinformed by like another I was reading about today was about the way that we got the term the Middle East,
Mm,
right? Because it's basically Southwest Asia and Northern Africa, Northeast
right.
Africa. But the term Middle East came about as a result of like British colonial actions in one way or another. Somebody's trying to create relevance in some term because they had the Near East already. Near East
Mm-hmm.
was like the Mediterranean coast, and so the Middle East was just a term to reference that next area for the British Empire. And at some point in time, the U.S. Empire kicked on. They established a Middle East office of their own in like 1940s, 1947 or something like that. And so it wasn't really a term, and it's just kind of like a silly colonial term to refer to it as the Middle East. Otherwise, just like Arabic, they've got and I'm sure other languages of the area, they've just got different names for the different regions, you
Yeah.
know. And I was just labeling it as Southwest Asia and Northern Africa and Northeast Africa, and That works too, but it's just kind of weird how history is in our mindscape is defined by all this crazy shit that really has no business being there once you dig below the surface. You know,
Yeah.
True.
purge
Yeah.
your idols. Yeah,
I think it's very easy for us to basically get these stories kind of fucked up. Is really as they get passed along, they're basically getting screwed up all the time. So you have things like this where it's like, well, kind of some guys were talking. They're like, there's the Far East and there's the Near East, and like
yeah,
it's in between those two. They're like, oh, the Middle East, and they're like, yeah,
yeah,
sure. And now everybody's like, that's the fucking term. You know,
exactly.
that's what it is.
I mean, they were setting up that Anchorman joke. You know what I mean? And that was pretty good. I mean, that might be worth the whole thing if you think about it. It was pretty funny when you watch that one the first time and that whole thing.
What was the part of that one?
I think it was kind of in the beginning. It's when the dude, Brick Tamlin, the stupid guy, he's
Uh,
talking about the weather and he points towards the Midwest United States and he calls it the Middle East.
oh, that's
Yeah,
right. Yeah, that's
yeah.
right. Yeah,
It's just like,
it's
damn, that's,
it's funny
yeah,
because the things changing over time. So there's a lot to the written text and the oral text. So when you get into the ancient, more into the Kabbalah, you find out it's not just about the written. You can't have the written without the oral. They're inseparable because one is ingrained into whatever the cultural relevance was at that time, and you don't even really know, unless it's
Mhm.
carried on orally. And that's why also the cadence of the resonance and the tone and the frequencies, like some of the original or the Kabbalistic Hebrew script, line up with different constellations in the stars. So there's different like correlations in their resonances or some kind of harmonic resonance with constellations. Whether that's all understanding maybe the mathematical structure of the universe over time, and then they're carried on for some reason, became secret or less commonly known because it's all out there. It's just most people don't take this time to study that deeply into it. You know,
Mhm.
it's interesting.
yeah. It sounds difficult to transmit. Like, I mean, oral transmission is known to change over time, but it makes you wonder how much of it changes and doesn't change. That's pretty rad,
Right.
though. I mean, it's kind of
Well,
like,
a lot of the oral history, you see the stories change. Like, what's his name? He's a professor, Jewish professor at Harvard back early 1900s, and he's the first one to compile all the written texts from around the world, the Jewish cultures around the world, of the stories carried on of Abraham, and just all the ones that are in the Bible, but a lot of ones that aren't. They're anecdotal, so they're not the canon, but they're anecdotal through the oral
apocryphal.
history.
Yeah, the apocryphal
Yeah,
text.
but
Yeah.
this is the Mishnah and some of the others that are actually the oral. So they originally were not supposed to be written down. Apparently, they were told to be written down, or they're going to be eliminated in like the 1300s or some of the earliest texts. And there's some translations that are amazing, the Zohar and some other stuff that's really early on. That's all oral, expanding on the oral dynamic of the tradition. And they do have variations in some of the stories, but they're not like critical. They're still elaborating certain facets or maybe little additional uh, subtle. What's sort of like for that a positive benefits in a positive way, like supplemental. That's what I'm looking for. Supplemental to the main theme or the moral of the story or the whatever. So it just
Right.
shows there is change over the time, but there is a massive consistency in the oral of the actual message being carried on of what matters
Yeah.
or seems to matter.
I think that might be like an earmark of people trying to kind of take these powerful stories and use it to get some kind of agenda across. So they kind of they include like a side story inside of the primary arc where
Right,
they're like,
totally.
and also this, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
it's like,
Yeah.
wow, man, yeah, it's from the story of Abraham. Shit, I better listen.
Yeah, what's
Mm-hmm.
the dude's name? Richard Carrier. He's done a bunch of interesting talks. You can see him on YouTube, and he's talking about how the purpose of Christianity itself was basically to create a Jewish identity after the fall of the temple and of Jerusalem itself, because
Mm-hmm.
the temple was so central to the identity. There were like all the sorts of unofficial Jewish people who didn't subscribe to the central religion, right? But the central religion itself, it was important to go to the temple once every year to be ritually cleansed. And so if you can't go to the temple, then what are you going to do? And so that's where a lot of, if you take that lens and look at a lot of the gospel, looking at what they're trying to do from exactly what you're saying, like what's their agenda they're trying to get across, you can
Mm-hmm.
see when he's doing stuff like busting through the temple and all that stuff and declaring certain people as hypocrites and all that. Um, he's trying to delegitimize the necessity of the temple. He's also saying this temple will be torn down, type of thing. He's trying to delegitimize the necessity of the temple within the spiritual life of the person. And
Mm-hmm.
this new form of Jewish very, very compatible with Gentile people because it's not geographically located. that sort of freed it geographically, was the
Yeah, man.
Romans coming in and destroying Jerusalem and stuff. And the political elements, it's like there was this a worldview necessity to have like a escape hatch, and that's what Jesus represents. It's pretty crazy.
I think that we still do that too, like in many different
Worldview escape.
dimensionalities with the whole like the savior complex is really functionally just different formats of stories that are painted on top of that escape hatch that you're talking about right
That's
there.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing to know too, especially given the current world climate, where you bring up that like the destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans is really what kind of freed Christianity to go worldwide because there was no centralized temple anymore, and we have the situation in the world now where many people feel like, fuck, maybe we're in the middle of an apocalypse, guys. I don't know, but nevertheless, like that concept right there, that there's been many times in history where like a destruction preceded a great change, and like whether you think that Christianity going worldwide is for a good or for a bad, from the perspective of Christianity, going worldwide is obviously a good, right? Bigger market, right?
Sure.
Like more followers, more belief. So like to Christianity's perspective, that's a good thing
Oh
for
yeah.
sure.
Well, apocalypse itself just means unveiling, and it's
Right.
just an unveiling of a new world, the end of the world as we know it, and the birth of a new world. And that new world, like in the Christian eschatology, once you go through the Great Tribulation and the whole Left Behind series happens, Jesus returns, and you have 1,000 years of golden age of humanity. So
Right.
that's one of like the hopeful message that's built in for people. But if you're a believer, you're already out of there. I don't even anyway. But actually, a
Yeah,
thousand years is actually
confusing, right?
way.
144,000 people get taken away, and the rest of them
Yeah,
get to experience heaven on earth for the next 1,000 years.
right.
But
And
apparently, those ones won.
well, the whole rapture thing was it came about in like 1844 with like a random preacher dude out in the middle of America who's saying like, oh, this is going to happen. I'm going to interpret this Revelations verse to say that this means that we're going to be lifted into the air, and there's going to make bumper stickers about it in 150 years. You know what I mean? But
That
and
was his business plan, huh? You got that
he
150
had the
year scale,
long
the
play.
long
You
play.
could tell. Yeah, he's that type of dude. But his short play predictions, they didn't come true. And I think he was actually like he actually convinced him to believe him for another prediction. I think I could be getting this wrong, but at some point they're just like, yeah, it's just stupid. But in modern times, people look back to that and they say, and also that kind of existed and floated around as an idea for a long time, but it came really, really boosted along with the sort of political Christianity, especially of like the 80s and the 90s.
Hmm.
That's where the whole Left Behind thing comes. Tim LaHaye, they're all plugged into like President Bush's, Bush 1 and 2, like advisory boards, you know,
Right.
Yeah.
while they're writing this book and making these things. So there's that's my most compelling argument about Kirk Cameron actually being the Antichrist. I think he's got a 666 tattoo on his head. If you've seen the Omen, piece it all together, and you will find out the trench coat, his Way of the Master video. He's got this trench coat. These are all symbols. But anyway, there's the whole idea that right now the apocalypse we're facing right now could be preceding a change that is extremely positive or extremely negative. We don't have any real indication if it's going to slide towards like crazy authoritarian government, or if we're going to find a way to have like some like real new form of democracy that actually is like a real election and not like a rigged election systems and rigged media and all that, which is an illegitimate form of government, which is like destroying ecosystems around the world, destroying like the planet, as well as just destroying human lives left and right. Which way are we going to go with this? Because all these challenges, we've got like people trying to make money off of confusing us, and it's fucked up, and it's
Hmm.
not going to
No
work.
shit.
It's not going to work. Like
Yeah.
this world will just like uh, become mostly uninhabitable if we don't get that type of thing under control. And it's kind of like peculiarity of the human mind that we care about certain stuff and we care about our certain locality, but this is definitely like that's next order of thing where you care about like your civic identity and your polity, that
Right.
type of
Yeah.
thing. And so that's like we're intentionally miseducated, misinformed, undereducated about these specific topics in order to disempower the individual, because this isn't a real democracy. So it's an oligarchy that masks its democracy, and
Couldn't
it
agree
always
more.
has been. It's never been a real democracy. When it's It's we know what elections are. We see the elections that we have. You know, if you see any of the primary elections in Georgia and Kentucky and stuff, the Democrats are rigging it against like the progressive challengers and stuff. It's all, every single election is rigged. They pick the candidates, they always have. And the in this modern time, we go around the country, the world, and like we overturned Ukraine in 2014. We overturned Bolivia just like not long ago because we said there were issues with their elections. Actually, with Bolivia, there wasn't an issue with their election. We just told people to create a narrative about it, and then we went with it and kicked out their dude and installed new people. Um, so this is like we the people that we overturn have better elections than we do. If we put ourselves standard, you know, and there's no way that you can actually have. I don't know if I'm necessarily like a hardcore believer in democracy, but I'm willing to at least
Mm,
give it a try for real for the first time ever, perhaps, at least in this
mm.
country. Maybe other countries are better at it, which is, I guess, my point. But we should kind of catch up to that and like not have dumbass electronic vote tabulation machines that count our votes for us, that are built by like Republican, cronies,
Mm.
Diebold and all that stuff, Diebold, and whatever they became, whatever companies they became. Um, they like LA County out here. They just spent something like $250 million, $250 million on a new voting system. And then the primary election came around, and there were just lines out, because none of the machines work. Oh, we're not working. Oh my god! It's like, how did you sink $250 million
Yeah,
into that?
seriously.
So if we all this stuff is just ticking by and ticking by,
Mm.
and every single election happens, and people don't go on the street for the elections. You know what I mean? And at some point in time, I wonder if people will get that, because you can't do anything. You can't accomplish any kind of reforms that you want when you're just like being oligarch leaders to do it, and you're gonna like, I don't know. Um, you actually need real elections if you want to have leaders that are supposed to represent the people. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you go through one by one, and it's like, oh, they found, they had more money, the media was
Zach, do you think there's a way you could do real elections? Like, have you thought about a way, Zach? I know you've done a lot of this type of thinking in your life.
I mean, I think you can, but really, I don't actually even think that an elective format is the most functional. Really,
what do you think?
not like a completely broad election where every motherfucker out there gets to choose who they think is best when 90% of those people are completely uninformed on the candidate.
No
People aren't
doubt.
actually driven enough to educate themselves about things that matter. They think that by going out there and voting, they're doing their part. But if you didn't get educated before you voted, then you went out there and just fucking basically fucked up the whole system. You did literally a negative good, like you're the
Yeah.
opposite of good if you're voting and you're not completely informed on what you're voting for. So I don't think, like, I'm not for the whole right to vote thing. Not to be honest, I don't think everybody should have the right to vote. I think I've met a lot of fucking idiots in my life, and I wouldn't want them voting on where I'm going to eat dinner tonight, let alone
What would your
establishing my
criteria be?
laws.
That's like the Starship Troopers thing.
That's a
You have to
tough one
serve.
right there. What is
But
the
what
criteria?
would your criteria be? Because like, to me, that's the real sticking point. Because if we could define a criteria that actually succeeded in determining a better government, like I'm tempted to make it the voting age limit. You can't vote if you're over 45. I think we'd have a better fucking world.
I
Kind of
think that's
half
probably something
joking.
that I would put in there, you know?
See, and so if we actually could determine a real criteria that would succeed, I would definitely be behind it,
Right. Not
because
something like you have to have land or whatever, because like not everybody's got land, and that's the
right.
whole
Yeah.
problem all over again. But yeah, an age, because literally whatever your fucking life was by 45, yeah, hopefully you had a decent balance
I
to
think
kind of
first
have
and
something on your
foremost,
head when you're
we
voting
get together
of
a
whatever you think
committee
good
of
might.
people that we're confident don't have their head in their ass, and they talk about things like this and come to a communal agreement utilizing as many intellects as possible to determine what would be the most effective way to generate a representative that actually speaks for the people and continues to act that way without that power corrupting them. I don't think I have the answer to the right way, but part of that is because I don't spend any time thinking about it. Because if you think like, I don't think that that's ever going to happen. Like, at
Yeah,
least
I
not in
mean,
my lifetime. There's not going to be that kind of system.
Hmm.
like people have been talking about this for thousands of years too. You could, like, Plato wrote the Republic about it, where that's kind of, you're taking the Socratic position in general, is that the one that Socrates took, in that you don't have real faith in the average person, in the demos, in the whole democratic entity. And I don't think that's necessarily unjustified, because I think your experience is accurate. I think on average, if you go out with a camera and a microphone and talk to somebody, if you do any kind of poll, you're not going to get a really good result on education. I think there's a lot to say about how things could be reformed, especially our media, so that that level of education is on a different level, right? And that
Absolutely.
comes to candidates, it comes to like how to work with how to all sorts of different information. We need an upgrade because we need to stop people making a buck off of our clicks and attention and whether we're watching their TV show.
Yeah.
There's we need a
What do
different,
you
yeah.
what do you think about creating small communities outside of the system and that whole paradigm that opens up to?
I think that the whatever new system that comes and actually works needs to both allow for that and enable that for people to make small communities. But the same type of system, and it's basically almost social network if you think about it, would be scalable to large communities as well in cities. So if you wanted to make a small community, what's your purpose for doing it? Is it to create an intentional community with people who have similar type of values, who want a similar type of life? What is it exactly, and how do you measure it? Because
Yeah,
there's a lot. Anytime you look at the history of intentional communities, you can see a lot of trouble and the repeat trouble, same
totally.
trouble over and over again.
Yeah,
And to me, it reflects the trouble we have in society, which is how to choose and delegate authority, how to make decisions, right?
sure. Yeah,
And
totally.
if you've got a small community in general, it's going to be more of a democratic base.
There's
But
like there are principles in that dynamic. I mean, you've been in a lot of churches in different ways. People lead in different ways, different businesses and whatever bosses. They all, they're all different frameworks of the same thing.
yeah,
Um, but when you're able to proceed that way, some are way better than others, and the other ones, one, are authentic. They're not just putting on a front because they're on stage. They're pretty legit. Like they're not fucking raw a bit or whatever to your level of rawness is, and but they're authentic as a person,
yeah, yeah,
and they also care about the actual people. There's a dynamic of like serving also. So everybody serves. I mean, their service maybe someone who just speaks well. He's up there often, but like we do a podcast, but it doesn't matter. It's just a thing.
yeah,
Everybody in the community does their own thing. So like if everybody's just
yeah,
happy for everybody else and finds other ways they fit in to help out, just
right.
find that the negentropic point or whatever, the right, that spot, that video. I'm thinking of that one where all the balls magnetize towards the center and find their own coherent space within the community,
Yeah,
and
that's
each one's holding space for each other.
yeah, and look at that with the lens of like what are the experiencing, because if you're going to make a rural community and you're intending on growing a lot of your food, that's a lot of human labor that goes into it. So if
Yeah,
that's a possibility and you can organize that human labor in a way that's really productive, then like that's great. And you can see a
yeah,
social network helping with that, reminding people to freaking plant the seeds and do all teamwork, that kind of thing. Go and help
yeah,
other nearby communities, so you can just do a whole bunch of people to harvest in a day. Do all that kind of stuff where you actually magnify the power of people using technology, because we have limitations physically in terms of our ability to communicate. And the discovery of the electromagnetic spectrum basically changed that entire dynamic. And we have like exactly what we're doing here. That's using it, enabling all sorts of different information to be exchanged. It's almost the important part. But to actually rally people together, it's almost like you're doing a flash mob for pruning fruit, and like
good way
just
to
like,
say it.
dude, that'd be so cool. You just get a bunch of people and just mow through, and this is the way that communities have worked together in the past. And there's
Yeah,
a mutual aid. That's what they call that, right?
yeah,
So we're talking about take this community, same community, and imagine just like a plague of locusts came through and ate all the leaves on the trees, and there's going to be no fruit for the season. What are they
yeah.
going to do? And so hopefully we live in a world where we can just have like a basic ability to survive. Even if you're out there, and the currency is money for doing all this, it's kind of basic income is the general idea for accomplishing it. But
Right.
however it happens, that people have access to resources to buoy themselves if they're not able to be as productive, even if they make a mistake and it's their own damn fault. Then we've
Right.
still got people who are trying to live, and we've got like children with these people, and so we're trying to just make everybody raise up to a certain level. And if people want to go out and make intentional communities, then back to that education point, we've got a lot of work to do in terms of like getting everybody rallied and focused on what our moving forward moral system is. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of discord right now that's being promoted in a bunch of different ways, and that's totally fine because there's a lot of things being worked out. People are moving in all sorts of different directions, and it's a positive thing evolution wise. But in terms of moving out to creating intentional communities, or even like living in a giant apartment building or something, some underground apartment earth scraper, something like that, where you don't have to live above ground the same kind of way. Even if you're doing that type of thing, I feel like there's a parity. There's a way to compare the two, rural and urban experience, that doesn't exist right now. The gap between urban and rural people is huge. Attitudes, all sorts of stuff. There's a reason why, like, rural kids, if they're gay or something, they want to move to the city because it's not the best life for them out there.
Yeah.
But in the future, especially something along those lines, gap shouldn't exist. It's like they should have broadband internet. You know what I mean? So there's this kind of education thing. It definitely has to involve the internet. But when we're talking about what are the clarifying what are the things you want to accomplish with intentional community, small community out there, I feel like if we had a way to rally together the experiences of people and come up with a coherent education, one that I don't think I currently possess, even though I'm super interested on the topic. I feel like we get a lot more high success rate and people feeling like they're accomplishing what they want, instead of going out and spending a few years and getting exhausted and being like, I need to live in the city for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, have a real positive experience, get the best out of it, because it's a cool thing. It's really cool.
Yeah. There's a lot of. Sorry, do you have anything to say, Zach?
Go ahead, man.
There's a lot of cool dynamics with that whole community thing. But like, I mean, it's one thing when you're raised in a lifestyle, right? And a lot of times they make it this odd spectrum, because there are realities to, like, weird, crazy Amish, or like so off grid that it is bad or weird, whatever that means. Just they paint those pictures in that way. I'm sure there are some. Given the south, there's like a full spectrum in between. And people just pretty much kind of live off the grid from the other. They live within a community. I think in one church in a dynamic, it was called there's like there's friends, but then there were covenant friends, I don't know, but deeper level of like bond, like covenant community, I think that's what it was, covenant community. And that there is some kind of community agreed upon moral value set, standard, service, I don't know, whatever that means.
It is the covenant.
Like, the covenant, but it's like sort of it is, but that there's, and then that's more trustworthy. It's kids that that the parents well enough. If there's transparency with them, that you're not worried about maybe something going on behind closed doors. Like, Jesus, who knows with people, right? But you only want to do it with certain people. So there's not an expectation. They're like, oh, you're in the community, so you should be able to watch my kids. Like, like there's boundaries and shit. I don't know. Figuring that out. There's people who are close, people who are different layers of trust and building trust. I don't know. It's a really dynamic.
Like, I heard women in Iceland, they'll leave their child in the stroller, like, outside, and go and hang out with their friends inside of a shop and stuff. I'm just like, is that true? Is that real? That kind of level of trust and community, I wonder if it would be a good study example in those type of ways. But I mean, like, about that exact same type of idea is like, wouldn't it be great to live in a world where you could go to church or whatever, a temple or whatever, and not worry about that authority figure wanting to, like, rape children? You know what I mean? That's just like the most fucked up, upside down world that we happen to live in right now.
Right.
That's really more of a measure of authority, I think.
Correct.
And we see it like that's kind of like lesson of modern times, and like Me Too type of. That's not really new, and the general lesson is that authority figures get protected like golden gooses, and it puts them in this, like, frictionless space type of thing where they can just do anything they want. They can just, like, spy on people and rape people and do anything they want, and they will know they'll be before they get actually stopped. And basically, that incentive structure creates those people. We shouldn't have that type of authority. Like, we should have a way more. It plays upon the Stockholm syndrome way that humans are, because go back the majority of human history, and the main thing we're trying to do, especially young men going around who are unmarried or whatever, are going to go around trying to bop a girl in the head from a neighboring village and drag her back to the cave. You know what I mean? And so this created this impulse pressure evolution where people, like, fall in love with their captor type of thing. Because if you brought back two people to the cave, and one was, like, angry the whole time, and one was falling in love with genetics. And this is way before there were humans and stuff too. And so that Stockholm syndrome plays into this power dynamic where we were like, oh no, that couldn't happen. They're a pillar of the community. You know what I mean? That's the servant of God. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's like my bridge to God. My child told me to what? I didn't even like hear. I just kind of blacked out for a second when they told me what they did because it's totally impossible. That's the way so many people react, and it's like that's something that's kind of melting away over time because this really strange thing of like hearing that your child or somebody near you is being sexually abused and then not doing anything about it or pretending it's not happening is just fucking crazy. And there's a generation gap that's addressing this type of stuff, this sort of like addiction to authority,
Mm-hmm.
where we allow all this stuff, and that's just one form of abuse. This is a particularly hideous form of
Dude,
abuse.
right. Well, that was in the same thing. I was really surprised. I mean, similar dynamic, not quite as terrible, but a similar principle, just giving away authority. So, like, when one of my past relationships, her grandfather died, and we were there in the hospital for several days, like taking notes of what meds he was taking, when he was taking them, just for our own sake to understand it, look them up, what they meant, what they were, spend time. We don't also want to bug them with questions unnecessarily, and so that we would. Sorry, I looked at the chat and get distracted. It happens. Shit. All right. And so, shit, can you help me out? It's the first time I lost my spot.
Grandpa. Tell me
Okay.
about Grandpa.
Yeah. So we saw them like 2 or 3 times coming to try to double them up on meds, right? Some like apologized or whatever. Other ones like, no, it's not on the computer. No, he hasn't taken them yet. We literally just asked them when they were in here 20 minutes ago. It said 4 hours was the next dose. What are you doing? Because
Yeah.
they didn't put in the computer or didn't read it. Like, and people, man, so much attitude, right?
In
But such incompetence, right? But so then, though, here's the thing, though. Didn't expect this, but we're responding appropriately, right? We're not
yeah.
crazy here,
No,
right?
no,
Whatever, it totally makes sense. Well, except we're presenting this to his wife, her grandma, and she's really old school in that way, which I didn't realize this was a thing. This kind of really woke me up in a certain way of people. But she said she would negate like blatant evidence of stuff, and she's like, "Oh, they're the doctors. Just trust them. Just trust." Like,
30.
what?
Yeah.
What? Just they know what they're doing. Just let them do it. She was going to let them double dose them. What do
Yeah.
you mean? There's the
Right.
authority,
That's I mean, yeah, there's probably a lot of layers to that, but that's I mean why Timothy Leary would be like, question authority. That's the whole fucking thing.
You're just
Because
making notes,
it's
paying
crazy.
attention.
Yeah, that's I mean that's like there's such contradictions there. And that is the problem. Like and that is something that like art and all that stuff is really out there to question authority. Great advances in that in the last 100 years and stuff, but in general, humans are still stuck in authority mode when we're talking about just weighing evidence and all that. It's like, why do you believe that global warming is happening or climate change, whatever? Think because 97% of scientists believe it. Because if that's good enough for you, true. Because 97% of scientists could be wrong in some random thing. It's not like that hasn't happened in the past. It's not like authorities
Yeah,
haven't completely misrepresented. Ask your doctor which brand of cigarettes is right for you. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Science is a weapon, and I see like people accuse people on the right of being anti-science when that's not really true at all.
Mm-hmm.
They'll say anti-vaxxers are anti-science when they just have different science that they're relying on, and
Right, totally.
all these different groups.
Well,
There's yeah, yep,
even on that same dynamic, the whole mask thing. Because when we were in a comment thread about it recently, right? And then they went back and watched this other video, and there's some other studies that he highlighted. I screenshot them, put them up back on the same thread to like expand it out. So instead of that one clip of like 99% people, blah blah blah, different countries or age groups that survive the coronavirus or COVID-19, but it broke down different studies specifically on the benefit or detriment of cloth masks. And one of the
right.
different studies, did you read through those at all?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay,
Yeah,
so stuff like
yeah,
that. So there's like legitimate stuff on both sides.
right.
It's
And
like
so it
making a
like
massive cultural moral decision out of it. Moral shaming is like really that's the part that's like too much for
what's
me. Like, come on.
Yeah, there's a different because when there's no way to just compare studies to studies, You know what I mean? Like that's where we need like a higher form of evidential structure, to work on. Because if it's just like I'm going to compare this number of studies to this number of studies,
Right.
that's
Right.
not, that's just another form of authority, because the study is an
Right.
authority
Here's the
again.
thing, man. Like I sometimes it's debate on every post, some level, because especially that's how it is when the atmospheres are like this, right? Just which is kind of silly, but it is. Unless you just really don't care. Some people clearly don't. Right? They're posting like, if you like Trump, unadd me now, or just say all sorts of shit. Or if you believe COVID's actually a pandemic, I'm unfriending you, or some shit.
Yeah,
Like, all right. Somebody said something to me one time on some other unrelated thing that was just really funny timing. But he said, not an airport. You don't need to announce your departure.
yeah,
Like shit, man. Just do what you gotta do. Like these just like big reactions. I
yeah,
don't know the responses maybe for some people. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just really
totally.
intense the way
Yeah,
people do
no,
that
it is
shit, you
it
know?
is intense, because we're in like a weird soup. We're like we're kind of unique in terms of the countries around the world that are even like having this issue necessarily. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when we're actually, I've always been really skeptical of mask wearing, because the idea of the virus being too small, for a fucking cloth, like that made a lot of
Uh-huh.
sense to me.
Right.
I guess like I got swayed because of reading the whole ability for the cloth mask to hold back the water droplets, or actually have the virus, and the general
Right.
idea that the more virus you're exposed to, whatever. So that's like, I don't really mind wearing it for that reason, in that way. But
When
I
in the inverse of that, exact same thing or whatever, the moisture that you retain on the mask, they're showing that it retains more of the virus and more of the
yeah,
bacteria, so you're
yeah.
actually rebreathing it back in. So it's
Well,
like like
if you have it,
damn if
yes,
you do,
have the
you don't.
virus. If you're already generating the
Right.
virus, then it's there. But if you're already generating the virus, also, I know certain types of masks can actually aerosolize it, which is, putting in super tiny water droplet particles that fly through the air very easily. So it's not
Uh-huh.
super simple. But this is the
Sure.
general idea. Like, we shouldn't even have to like discuss this. It's between us. We shouldn't have to compare studies. This should just be something that is like easily scientifically known. But we're way the fuck behind, and it's not like
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying like other countries have their way of understanding it. I guess like looking at the example of Japan and stuff, where they just had masks and they didn't even have to fucking lock down, and they've only got like 1,000 deaths or less or something. It's there's a lot of questions that we don't know about, and we're all working with like a real lack of
Yeah.
information, which is fucking
Well, see,
crazy.
Let's
that's
face
it.
it, the
Yeah.
statistics that are out there are dog shit too. Like you
Yeah,
can't trust any statistics out there right
None.
now. The potentials for false reporting and manipulation of that reporting and shit like that is just through the roof.
yeah, I mean, the Trump administration just took control of the CDC data, and they took down the COVID tracker. So it's happening. Like, there's a lot of people with different agendas to make it look in different ways. Certain states were actually adding in all sorts of like weird people into the testing group to overinflate their tests to make it seem like they had smaller percentages. But there are arguments in a different direction as well about people overinflating the numbers. I'm not sure how I feel about it, because to me the most relevant way to shine a light on it is to look at the excess deaths statistic, like this time last year, how many people were dying, type of thing. And we
Mm.
know that even with all the stuff that they include about how many more people there will be and how many more are expected to die, there's like like already there's something like 250,000 extra dead, and our number of COVID dead are like 120 something
Well,
official.
what have you seen about the studies or reports and the ones where they're marking anything within the COVID family or the non,
Oh,
there's a
the
lot more than
coronavirus.
COVID-19. Yeah, the
Yeah,
coronavirus family and even including the flu and even on the where you talk about here's your
right,
antibody test, but don't, even if it is
totally. Yeah,
positive, it could just be the normal
totally.
flu.
Yeah,
And but
there's
counting that
false
all as
positives.
COVID-19.
There's false positive issues. There are different levels depending on different tests. But to me, that's why the excess death statistic is most helpful here, because we don't have to rely on necessarily other data points, because all when you just look at that in a vacuum, you realize there's more people dying, and you have to answer that question: why are they dying? You know what I
Mm.
mean? And so you get the standout issue is COVID, because look at a place like Italy, their official count, they know that at least another 100% of that died at home and were not counted in their official count. So uh, that's why, to me, I think the numbers of real dead are probably like way, way bigger. If not like double what they currently are. based on the excess death statistic, because if there's another way to explain those excess deaths, and I don't like, there are higher suicide rates and all that type of thing right now for really fucking good reason. People are like losing their livelihoods left and right, and it's driving people to the edge. People are looking at foreclosure and evictions. So all this type of stuff's happening right now, and so there could be other ways to explain it, but not to that degree. You know what I mean? There's just a huge standout additional cause of death in the United States to the tune of somewhere around that number. I don't know what it currently is because I looked at that a little bit ago. But to me, that's why it's helpful, because we can't trust the test at this point in time. I'm totally confused about it, to be quite honest, because you hear
I
about
really think that's the whole goal right there, is the confusion. There's a,
absolutely.
there's an old CIA basically interrogation technique or psychological distortion technique that has to do with purposely pushing people into confusion. And really, if you look at macro society right now and kind of look at that as an interrogation room, very much so the public is having this psychological operation utilized on it. And you're seeing the direct effects of it with the rise in suicides, rise in domestic violence, rise in just overall confusion. People have new things to argue about. They're polarizing because of things that really there's no reason for the people to be polarized because of. All kinds of things like this. Infighting is being generated inside of that
Oh yeah,
space of
civil
confusion.
strife, 100%. Dude got mad at me at the sandwich shop the other day. Actually, kind of a trippy story. I was wearing a mask, and the dude had a Trump sticker. He was double parked, and I went in, and I just asked, it was him and his wife and son, and I asked if they were double parked, if that was them, and they said yeah. And wife and son left, but the guy basically got really pissed off at me. He called me an SJW. And he said I'm just trying to like pick on him because he's got a Trump sticker on his car. And I'm like, dude, let's just calm down. And
Jeez.
but
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I didn't realize that the tensions were that high. It's not, that's not something that I encountered
Yeah.
in my
That's
life.
personalized too, in a certain way. Like this guy probably goes around and tries to start a lot of political
Oh yeah,
arguments in
he
his
asked
life.
me if
Anyways,
I ever
everything
committed
becomes
a sin in
political.
my life. It's exactly right. He asked me
You
if I
threw
committed
that in
some.
there too?
Yeah, and
Wow. Trying to get
I'm
you
like, dude,
saved
you
too?
take Jesus around with you and you hit him over, people over the head with him like that? Like, is
Jeez.
that, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's how that works. Yes,
Yeah.
but yeah, the general point about the increased
Love
civil
those.
spread, like, if we were doing a freaking Ocean's 11 thing and we were trying to create a diversion so we could raid the vault, what's the vault that's being raided right now? It's fucking trillions of dollars that they're printing, which you can't actually just print money. I know there's this thing called modern monetary theory that says you can just really print money, it's fine. But you can't actually do that. You can't just randomly print money and
Mm-hmm.
like 93% of it goes to the most rich people. You know what I mean? You see the list of people who benefit from these like current loan packages that Mnuchin won't tell us who it's going to because it's proprietary information. I know it's it's not taxpayer money because they're just like type in the computer and changing the numbers. But what this does is it devalues everything that you and I own, and it like just changes this whole wealth dynamic, because this isn't an imaginary monopoly game. They know exactly what they're doing, and this confusion, they're absolutely playing it. And both sides, when I say both sides, it's the fucking puppet show of the Democrats versus Republicans, because it's really one party, and they're just late stage empires in decline. What their government does is loot the populace. So this is the easiest way for them to do it. They did it in 2008.
Wow.
Was sort of like a test run
Yeah.
12 years ago, and
Oh, yeah,
people
I'm
got
with you.
really mad, right? And so
I
they
think
Did you
they've
just
check out?
actually looted the populace on numerous times, and they're surprised that it just keeps working, and there's still
Yep.
more to be looted, and
well,
it didn't capitulate after it.
this recent the CARES Act that just passed, it was the largest upward wealth transfer in history.
Huh.
So you can
Talk
like,
I
about it.
mean,
Can you break it down? I haven't looked into it
whether
enough.
it's through
yeah,
cryptocurrency or it's through these fucking loans or these stimulus packages or bailouts or something like that, I hope everybody knows that while they're sitting around worried about a virus and arguing with their friends about a mask, you're being fucking robbed blind. That's what's
yes,
happening right now.
that's
The
exactly what's
reality of the
happening.
situation.
I mean,
So
if we had like, yeah, what's happening is that basically they're stealing trillions of dollars. They're just giving it to their friends, and or everybody else's money. Just bump up the money of total dollars available in the economy, and then they give most of it to their friends. It's really simple. It's a really simple way where everybody now has less success. So what's going to happen is that we're watching. They're going to let people foreclose on their houses, let people get evicted, and homelessness is going to go way up. And all these distressed properties, which includes all sorts of businesses and It's not just small business, it's the pure one imports, medium, large size businesses. Lots of them are going under. They have a lot of distressed assets that are now available for purchase at like fire sale prices.
Yeah.
And who's got money? The people who just got money injected in your account. How that 1,200 stimulus feel? Imagine if it were trillions, and imagine what you could buy. And so they're just going to buy up these distressed properties for great deals with all their extra newfound money, and then do exactly as they did in 2008. And then everybody's struggling for less, and there's like part-time jobs, and there's higher inequality. So it's almost.
Sorry, go ahead, Zach.
Oh, no, it's just almost like they're trying to snap the system. That's all.
I didn't say anything.
Oh, I thought I talked at the same time. I got to bounce, but I must have been Adam that who would. But did you see the Big Short? I don't know if we talked about that last time.
Oh,
I was
yeah,
seeing link through IMDb.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Dude,
that's exactly what it
when
is.
I saw that, because that was back in 2014. I was with the year within it came out. I saw it at my grandparents, the past grandparents' place, and
I mean, if you want to know the future, just watch Christian Bale's everything he's ever made.
Yeah,
that will help you know what the future is going to be like, because
no doubt.
very much so the people that run this place, they very much so be worshiping the Christian Baal. So he's been a carrier of that the whole time. Equilibrium with the sense offending and shit. That's on the cards in the future.
Movie?
Like,
Baal, yeah, Baal.
Rain of Fire, yeah.
Yeah, everything he's done. The dude is bought and paid for, created motherfucking shill that puts basically talismanic witchcraft right in front of everybody's face.
Wow.
Dude, 100% true. Not a maybe.
Yeah.
So
great connections. Woo. Well done. I hadn't thought about that yet. That totally makes sense to me.
Yeah, I've realized I spent a lot of my life in a guild known as the Tetragrammaton Clerics, so it actually meant something to me. And then we started digging into the idea of like, well, what is this Tetragrammaton shit, and why clerics? And that's a weird name for guys who fight with guns and play police and all kinds of weird shit like that. Started digging into it, and next thing you know, I'm sitting here going like, fuck, wow, there's a lot in here.
Yeah.
No shit, man.
They're just fucking straight putting the quad towel right on the fucking barrels of their guns, not even hiding it away. Like, we got hardcore fucking right on Front Street Royal Arch Freemasonry going on here. And everybody's just like, oh, that was a good movie. Christian Bale's so cute.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, he's such a heartthrob. Did you see him in The Machinist where he looks like a methed out crackhead? He's still so pretty. Can you imagine that he did so well for that role? Like, every single thing the guy does. Every single thing the guy does.
Yeah.
Like, The Machinist, another interesting movie that everyone should watch. Well, or should you? I don't know. If you do, make sure that you got, like, I don't know, a truth serum with you or some shit so that you ain't getting bullshitted. Maybe don't watch those movies, actually, now that I think about it.
There's some good ones, though, out there. Not just like Riverdale by movie. You
gotta watch out for those ones, man. They're good. Good for a reason. There's a reason why they resonate so deep, and it's not because the fucking imagery was so great, really. So it's not as great as real life.
Story that's being told, just like Adam said at the very beginning. So like connecting with the narrative of the story being told, or something.
Yeah, well, these guys are a bunch of fucking OTO witches, and if you don't know what that means, you just haven't researched enough. But if you do take time to go down research down that path, you'll see that that's 100% true.
I don't know if it was etymologically connected in this dynamic or just the overlapping spheres or whatever. When I realized like marketing is the highest form of modern day witchcraft that's been around for the last 50 years, I'm like, holy shit.
That's mind control. PR itself, Bernays and all that type of thing. Like, man, it is enchantment.
Okay, when I'm with my my grandma, when I visit my grandma or my parents, and they're watching, I'm not really around TV at all. If I watch something, I watch something on Netflix or what YouTube video or whatever. I don't listen to TV. I can't stand commercials. You know what? I can't do it. Or
I love them, but I'm a marketer. I love marketing.
Yeah, there you go. If it's for research and that, but they're just having the background in between shows, right? And like at least I don't know, 30 to 40% of them are pharmaceutical commercials. And they just rattle on about the benefits of beautiful imagery and sounds and all the harmonic frequencies, body and it hurts and all that shit. And like, but at least 50% of the commercial is the fast speed side effects, and it's just insane to me. Just the fact that there's a whole other dynamics there, but the fact that that's going on all the time. Like I think it's only U.S. and New Zealand. They're only countries in the world that allow direct marketing to the consumer.
Yeah, it is weird for other people.
So why are they allowed to pitch you subconsciously, program you to go ask your doctor And then
Do you
there's
remember when that
kickbacks for
changed?
doctors.
Like that was changed in something like 2001 or something like that. It
Something,
was like
yeah, and
very
it flooded.
specific, and then all of a sudden it just switched on, and it is such a strange contradiction. It's very dystopian. Yeah, that
Yeah.
fast forward
To
side
just
effects.
promote pills, like as a culture or whatever. I'm not whatever it is, the thing, the culture we're in. There's a lot of pill promotion. Like I get the
Equilibrium,
science in
my
that
friends.
dynamic.
Equilibrium.
Yeah,
Everybody gets
Yeah,
together in a little herd and walks into the place in the morning and gets doled out their pills that keep them
oh,
from
it's great.
having any senses or feelings. It's the same
yeah.
thing. We have these pills already. They're called Xanax, Valium, lithium. The list goes on. We already have these. You already eat them. A lot of people
Well,
do.
Yeah.
they're legal.
Neither of you
Look at
do, thankfully.
the
Mm,
things that are illegal are the ones that they actually knew. Like the reason they made the war on drugs against cannabis was to attack the anti-war left and black people, so they could take people for whatever their common pleasure was and throw them in jail, throw them on the nightly news, saying, "Look at these criminals," because they wanted to get rid of the anti-war movement against Vietnam. And LSD was the same type of thing because it was more or less a stop-loss measure for Vietnam,
mm,
where they were losing too many soldiers for whatever reason out in Vietnam, going AWOL, you know,
mm.
because they were dropping acid and they were just realizing, what the fuck am I doing in a genocide? Being a stormtrooper in a
Shit, man.
genocide. I can only
Yeah.
imagine how many people
What
just
were you?
walked off
Because
in
I'm
the
trying to
jungle.
remember now, and I'm remembering we've definitely had this conversation before a bit, and we're diving into it. So I'm trying to remember and feel into that, and try to find a new thread on it, because this is really interesting. What's the different transition do you think that happens in psychedelics, or maybe LSD specifically, whether it's physiologically, but also in your imagination or your psyche, the way you interpret it, or whatever?
Yeah. Now, what do you mean? What's the
Causes
question
the benefit-
specifically?
That causes the benefit, where you said take that LSD, they realize what the fuck, I'm in a genocide. What makes them
Oh,
change their
yeah.
mind ultimately? With
That's
those leading
that's the
up.
default mode network thing. So the normal
That's
way
right.
that
Yeah,
we've
yeah,
been built up
yeah.
is the default mode network, and that takes a
Yeah.
break, and then all of a sudden this layer of assumptions that we live under
Yeah,
becomes
man.
just
Yeah,
totally
that's right.
exposed,
Totally.
right? And
Yeah.
so you're
Yeah, yeah,
allowed to
yeah. I remember
re-examine the
now.
assumptions, and this is also where the bad trip phenomenon comes through, because a lot of people they just don't want to examine their assumptions. They're not like, they don't have that resilience
Yeah.
built up at that point in time,
Yeah.
so they're not going to get that same degree as somebody who's just like, fucking do it, dude, fucking cleanse me, if
Right.
and so that layer of assumptions is the default mode network, because it's more effective, I guess, or it's just a default sober mindset for us to just have a identity, and this is a structure, these are the objects around us, here's letters and numbers and stuff, and then you can interpret it as a common world with other people. You know what I mean? We're not living in this like imagination land where just stuff is really ephemeral and comes in and out, because it's totally, even if
Mm,
we're all like based in that and come from that or something like that, we're still in this like real matrix world right now with real rules, you know. So I think there's that default mode network is what disengages and allows you to just have that kind of free form, free association. That's why it's really good for creativity too, because you take
mm,
two things that are normally unrelated, and you're like, oh, there's a real common thread, and it's fucking hilarious, or it's like, you know, makes you cry, or it's really musical, or something like that. Just the free association between stuff and the new type of connections that you can make is what's beautiful about disabling the default mode network. You know,
mm.
so it's
Yeah, that's right. I
yeah,
like that.
it's like if you had a machine of some kind and you could like turn it into shutdown mode, and then it has this AI that learns how to like upgrade its
Mm.
function automatically. So it's like a fucking miracle if you really think about it. That
Yep.
even if there's no like spirit world and metaphysical world, the fact that our brain is designed to engage that process is just a fucking miracle.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
even if the
man.
whole thing is just a hallucination, like an imaginative story that we made up,
Exactly.
it's still like, what an incredible creation, and
Yeah.
like, who came up
Yeah.
with that shit?
For real, and it's been there forever, and it really takes you to these like existential philosophical places where you're just like, why do I exist? Like, wait, I don't have a
Hmm.
reason to exist, and I need to make my own meaning. That's fucking stupid, but that's the way life is. Shit. Oh well, like I don't,
Couldn't agree more with that sentiment.
right? So you just kind of the banality of existence, but it's not the same type of thing where you're just like struck in horror and you're gonna write like some like make a new German word for the way that you feel or something.
Hmm.
You can actually like process through it and be like, oh well, there's still a reason to live, just because actually no, there's not, but I still feel like we're gonna live. Holy crap, this is
Right.
beautiful. You just have the feeling that emerges out of that. since their
Yeah.
reason disappears. That's a great, and all these different benefits from disabling the default mode
How,
network because of the
how
complexity of
would
the thing.
you on the polar or the other side of that dynamic? How would you think that whether from your own experiences, just your own study, or your own thoughts about the subject matter itself, or whatever, um, where depression takes a hold of people when they don't have a purpose in their life
Yeah.
because they don't have no meaning. It has
Oh
no
yeah.
meaning because some bigger meaning to them.
Sure. Well, this, like, I think depression's definitely a really complex phenomenon, but it is centrally around meaning. But I think the most important thing is to analyze this person within their circumstances. Like, are they, is it really fucking difficult for them to find a job because they're in a shitty economy? This type of stuff. Like, are they in
Sure.
a family that abuses them every day? If you take somebody who's in like an abusive marriage and they go to therapy, like, you have a lot of work to do to get that person to stop accepting abuse in their life. Just that, so this all kind of like the ability to engage a higher order of therapy, you know um validates purpose. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Mm. Yeah, and they're finding some type of self-derived value to apply to that therapy.
Yeah, and the idea of people creating their own meaning, that being satisfying to somebody, that your life is about creating your own meaning, um, that's almost what the story is for, the whole monomyth story, the hero type of thing, because the purpose of this journey, which is something you're supposed to recapitulate many times in your life. Every time you go out to the store is sort of like a hero's journey, especially right now. If you ever
Mm-hmm.
going on travel and stuff, this definitely feels like a hero's journey. It's, you've got the whole arc out, and you go and you meet friends who take you out there, and all this, and you come back and you bring back some knowledge or experience, memories. You don't have to defeat a dragon and get a princess or a gold, hoard of gold. You're supposed to bring back something. The full purpose of it is to make you feel satisfied living your life, being at home. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got this urge to just, I gotta go do something, I gotta like have a crazy night or something like that. That's that drive. And then if you find a simple way that doesn't get you killed, that's really safe and easy, and you can have that whole journey, then that's a great technology. There's many, many different ways of doing it, So this idea of allowing, like, giving people all these avenues to create the meaning in their life, that is something that's really community oriented. And to me is the opposite of the sort of alienation that we experience 40, 70 hours a week or you die homeless. You know what I mean? There's that's something in these in like intentional community. That's what you would want to be reinforcing with each other, is just this kind of like automatic human based sense of meaning where you could be anybody else, but it's just you, and you're there, and you
Yeah.
guys are working on the trees together, and you guys
And
are raking them.
I guess to bring that into a metaphor analogy, yeah, it's similar, I think. All right, the Rat City concept with
Yeah,
what's his name? Hari Johan, yeah, the whole
right.
dynamic where they chosen getting a mouse just in a cage by itself and being chose regular water, opioid water. It eventually chose the opioid water every time and OD'd or just whatever, became addicted to it. And then when they created a rat park city of an environment ideal for a rat, right? Community, tunnels, big, I don't know, whatever, all the stuff, whatever they put into it. And that they give them the same option, and that they ended up not using the opioids at all. Like, they had just regular water because they have
Right.
satiated the chemistry in their bodies,
Yeah,
you
this
know?
like the natural dopamine. I remember, I can't remember specifically about it, but I remember reading some kind of scathing criticism about Hari study, but I think the whole gist of it was that that's still a true conclusion. The
Mm,
general idea, even if he's like a flawed messenger, and I don't have any more specifics right now, but
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's irrelevant to the conclusion you're presenting, which is that if you present people with a satisfying life, they're not going to want to do all these like acting out type measures, and
No
this
doubt.
is huge because if you if you gave people X amount of $1,000 a month, what would happen to crime? You know what I
Right.
mean? Who would
And
need to
think
like
about that.
spend?
Think about that. Think about how practical, that real that could be. I mean, you could think this is fantasy, but if it's true that the United States government has incorporated the Federal Reserve, I mean, I say if it's true, there's so much information to take in. I know I saw the documents and but I haven't looked in a while, so I don't know. Shit changes, man. Writers, bills get overturned. I don't know. Pretty sure that happened. right? So that's a massive financial change in the whole infrastructure. If there's trillions being stolen that we're talking about right now in this whole dynamic, they have all being given back to the people. So if everybody just gets a paycheck, like 50 grand a month, some crazy thing, like who's going to rob anybody of anything? There's always people want more. I
Exactly.
get it. There are those sort of part of the spectrum.
Well, if
They're going to
everybody
go
gets
try to
fifty
steal everybody else's
thousand
money.
dollars, then the $50,000 basically isn't worth anything anymore.
Yeah,
No,
that's
I know.
it's
Well,
only an
so
extreme example. I get what
inflation,
you're saying. Yeah, because like if
if there's
you're, yeah,
hyperinflation.
yeah, if you had like a sustainable structure where you're able, and it's not that crazy actually funding a
You could,
UBI where,
you
yeah,
So you could do
uh,
it. I could imagine you do it progressive. I mean, maybe Zach, you've thoroughly thought this through more than I have. I think I did at a past time in my life. I just haven't touched on it in a while. But is there a way to distribute that money slowly over time in a way that benefits the economy? People know it's coming, right? We're going to increase it by 1,000 a month for everybody, starting at whatever $1,000 a month or 2,000 a month for everybody.
yeah,
Increase by one,
this,
3, 5. But there's a progression, so it doesn't overlap the economy. But people aren't freaking the fuck out. There's a guaranteed income because there's trillions they've taken back from the
right,
bankers, and like that, all that shit
that's
fucking
it.
actually happens.
Yeah,
I
like
think
right. Sorry, go ahead.
I think equality systems are a utopic farce. Pretty much
Yeah,
is my basis on that.
yeah,
I don't think any format of like we give everybody $50,000 works out in the long run. Even if it like lowers crime, whatever like that, the way that it affects the human psyche in the long run when you don't have any drive to progress or any ability to get ahead or something to work for and these
Yeah,
kinds of things like it's a negative in the long run.
well, that's the incentives argument against UBI is that it's the kind of thing that will sort of disable the human incentive to want to work and all that. But that's only for
I
people who want
personally.
to.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, that's only works for people who want to live on a basic life.
Yeah.
Like, would you
Well,
want to
with
live it?
UBI is it's a different situation because we're not then you're giving them basically like minimum wage. A lot of people are not happy with minimum wage. In fact, I would argue
Right,
that no one's happy with minimum
right, no
wage.
doubt.
They
Yeah,
get
yeah,
by with minimum wage.
yes,
And
Yeah,
yeah.
so
yeah,
if you establish some type of floor like that that's basically like a new foundation for people to reach for the stars from, that can be good. If you basically bring the stars down to them, then the stars lose all of their
right,
value and no
right.
one reaches
Yeah,
them
there's,
all.
and I that's definitely like I know that the like we're talking about equality, like equality of outcome versus equality of opportunities type of thing in there, and the idea is that people still have if there's a basic floor of life. And it's actually saves a lot of money to have a universal program rather than do what they call means test, where it's like, oh, if you make over $100,000, you don't get this. To actually administer that and to test people's income and to do all this costs a lot of money. So if you reduce the government administration just by being so simply giving people go. And the key thing about that is that there's we're talking about the crime thing and all that too, but you're giving this minimum amount to give people going, to keep people going. They don't have to have a job, which means you're now paying for unpaid labor, like parenting. So parents don't make any money unless they're getting welfare or something. But if you're getting paid to parent and you could actually do that, then this whole phenomenon of needing to go to daycare for your kids, and then you need to make more money to pay for that daycare. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
daycare
Right.
costs are going up. This whole idea that everybody needs to have a job, like in California, I remember my friend was telling me that on the Cal Works program, which is a welfare to work program, if as a mother she had her baby, and 2 weeks later they were telling her she needed to look for a job 2 weeks after having her kid. And I'm wondering what fucking stupid civilization does that.
Yeah.
And we have that kind of structure right now where we don't incentivize very important labor. We don't pay for that type of stuff. And also, like, I think if we had a UBI and it was proper, especially in a world of shrinking number of jobs and all that, we'd have people doing more like volunteer work. You could just like go get with a volunteer group and go and do landscaping around your city or your neighborhood or something, and that would effectively become paid labor that's very, very cheap to pay for. And it's similar to New Mexico. They built housing for their homeless on some level, and they found out that it was actually cheaper to build that house than the cops all their time going to handle people getting in trouble, homeless.
So what do you?
On the
Okay,
street.
so what do you? What would you? How would you handle? Because I can see the line of reasoning you're going with, and I don't know. Like I said, I don't really have hard perspectives on these. For the ones I've thought out more so, but these minutia of what we're getting into, like, because that broader picture, I have
Right.
more thorough, maybe more thought stances. But like when you get in the minutia, there are things that I haven't thought it through.
Sure.
So in that dynamic, my understanding of like 30% of the homeless in Seattle are released from the mental hospitals when they close them down in the 90s. They just release them out to the homeless.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that, and then there's repeated traumas and people that have been through severe shit in life, whatever, but like it's not as easy as just giving them homes. Like there's got to be a
Oh
way for
no.
them to live in
Yeah,
community
they have to have
where
a
they're not hurting
whole
themselves or other people, or they have the whatever that
exactly.
means, some kind of
It's
care.
they got to have like security. These are exactly. You're definitely hitting on all the right notes, and they have to be there. They got to be present. And it's got to be thought out. Because you've got to have these people need to have access to social care, like social workers, who are able to hook them up with different programs and this or that, who aren't trying to further stigmatize them with like mental illness diagnoses that are going to criminalize them and all that. There's a lot of
Right.
cyclical issues
Yeah.
that can happen.
What do you think about the forgot his name guy did that works on this too. Might actually been the same guy. It might be that diverse, but about doing the legalization in was it Holland or somewhere that they did the legalization of or decriminalization and made it a healthcare issue that you weren't nobody's going to prison over any kind of like narcotics or abuse or whatever. Like you
Oh,
were
yeah.
going to get the mental help you need, the physical help, the whatever help you need as a person to feel like you have value, whatever. The root issue in Rat Park City, right? Instead of pills or manage you, diagnoses you, and dope you down to chill you out.
Yeah,
Like, give,
that's not Portugal where they decriminalize everything.
maybe that might be what it is. I think I misquote it usually.
Yeah,
So,
there's
could be.
there's this guy Gabor Mate, and he goes into this issue because he runs I don't know what exactly some kind of like heroin safe injection clinic in Toronto, and he's talking about the experience where they create these rooms where people can take their heroin and inject without getting
Dude,
robbed.
yes, I know. I saw that. I saw that document. They did one in Seattle here. Is that? Are you talking about the one in King
Oh,
5, or I don't know if you're
oh,
in the area?
I
There
don't
was
know.
a
I
King 5
saw him on
documentary.
different stuff. No, I saw him on different stuff in the
I
Sons of
wonder if
Journalists. Yeah.
they did one specific to our city, right? And they really actually I was there with my parents watching. I usually watch this stuff. It's like channel the main 4 or 5 channel news. It was I don't know maybe a year ago now or something, and it was so shockingly moving. Like not in the like program way. Like I could see that they're fed up with shit. I know there's certain chief editors and stuff been fired over the recent years. People are the really corrupt ones or whatever. And like there's a lot of biographies, autobiographies by journalists out there. I think I don't know some of the famous ones who've
Mm.
talked about all that stuff, and a lot of that's been cleared. So there's an actual message I felt that was like, and they're talking about the healthcare system. They're showing the one in Rhode Island, I think the one you're talking about, and basically they were very clearly showing how much massively this better this is. And the more I mean, I understand, think about it, like I
Oh,
don't
they
see any
were
harm.
right. I know what you're talking about. That one I had issues with because they would not let basically like
Wait,
captured people there.
wait,
It was
say it
mentally ill and
again.
homeless.
I meant,
They wouldn't
hold on, I
let
missed
people
that.
leave.
They wouldn't let people leave. Like they were there, even if they wanted to leave, they would keep them there against their will. If
Oh,
anyone
okay. Oh,
pretty much the same
this one,
thing.
I think you were free to come in to do it, like up to a dose. They
Oh,
weren't
okay.
going to
Yeah, I'm
overdose you or
thinking of something
whatever. No,
different.
oh,
Yeah, that's
sorry.
the exact. Yeah,
Let
they
me
call.
clarify then,
Oh
because
no,
what
no,
I'm
no.
talking
Okay,
about
I get
sounds
it
like a
now.
good idea. So a clinic where they come
They had
in and they're talking
chains
about Rhode
on.
Island.
Yeah,
Yeah, Jesus,
that's
no. So like,
well,
and they came in, they were given whatever dose they needed. They weren't they can go do
exactly
their thing, go
right.
live their
You
life, right?
see,
They're not going to try to get on the street or whatever. And that,
exactly after
hold on.
the
If
yeah,
it's the same one, like 98% of them are gone within 4 years or something. 98%, not dead. They're back like off the drugs. They're clean
yeah, right.
because they had a way to do that wasn't one shamed by society in a sense, but it
Yeah,
wasn't also
totally.
immoral. We
Yes,
got to remove the moral stigma from the drugs.
right, and
Yeah,
that's totally it.
regarding both these things, Finland actually has a thing that they've been doing recently where they're now just recently claiming that like they've actually completely gotten rid of homelessness entirely through a program like this, like providing housing for them and providing services that
Cool.
allow them to like get back on their feet and shit. So
It's like like what strange thing, and the reason I brought that up as an example is because it's similar in this other way to UBI, where you actually the humane thing to do, which is like, oh, I'd love to give people free housing, but I can't. That actually humane thing to do is the one that saves taxpayer dollars as well. So it's like there's multiple arguments from multiple directions, and there's not really there's no reason to not do it, other
Mhm.
than antiquated notions of, hey, if you don't have a job, get fucked. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And starve. Like you need to have a job to work here, John Rambo. You know.
yeah, I'm gonna have to
Okay.
get out of here in a moment, guys. But like,
Oh,
really,
it's
with that,
cool.
like, I
Yeah.
think we need to get some of this fucking archaic thinking out of here. You talked about the nobody over 45 on the panel. I think that's really a
Yeah.
thing. Like at the
Yeah.
end of the
Yeah.
day, I think when people are when they are older, it's sensible, it's logical that they would be making more like self and my family centered decisions rather than thinking about the direction that the
Right.
world's gonna go because
Yeah.
they're
No
not gonna
doubt.
be in the fucking world soon. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You're just your thinking changes over that. So I think it really is important that The education is huge. Doing the education in a way where we get people when they're younger to be at a point where they can actually make worthwhile decisions and they are actually informed, so that we don't have to rely on some 70-year-old suit who doesn't even really know how the world operates at this point in time, that's stuck in his archaic thinking and continues to push the same shit because motherfuckers who don't have a job are lazy and they should all die. You know, that's just like,
Dude.
that's an old way of looking at shit. We need to look at shit a new way,
Yeah,
I think.
no
So,
doubt, bro.
I love you guys.
I
Adam,
concur, sir.
Yeah, it was a
it's
lot of
always
fun.
great having you here. I'd love to
Yeah, this
talk
works
to you
great.
more. I
Yeah.
really like your
Do this again
mind.
soon. We're all set up now.
So,
Adam,
yeah.
you have a few extra minutes? I'll stay on chat with you. I want to go over something
Yeah,
with
sure.
you.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool.
All right. I will talk to you guys later. I hope everybody
Cool.
has a
Peace,
good night.
man.
Thank you for being here and stuff. Like,
Hey, Jack.
subscribe, all the stuff.
Yeah.
Social media things, do them. All right. Talk to you later.
Love for
Peace.
Zach. Awesome. Hold on, let me play with the background stuff. Then I'm gonna do a screen share. So let me do this with my fancy background tools. Zach and I share on StreamYard. Oh, that, and then I gotta share it, and then it'll match. Ready? Watch me work my magic. All right.
Whoa.
Got it? Nice. See, look at all the boxes around us. That's all Zach, man. He created all this. By the way, Zach does Photoshop stuff too. If you ever want to ask him about that, or like ask him or things you'd want like him to Photoshop for you, I'm sure he can
Right.
give you a price, and he's worth this. Is like he just threw this together, and it's great. Anyhow, all right. So check this out. Let's see if I can zoom in on this. So this post right here. Oh, come on, zoom. Can I zoom on the page? There we go. Whoa.
Mhm.
Hello. All right, that over here. Whatever, I'll read here.
Oh, it's
So,
gonna. It'll be below it. It'll be below that. You'll have to scroll
right
down
here.
once you make
Yeah.
it bigger. But I see what it is. So you're
Did you
talking
read
about.
Did you read this? This one right here, the
No,
CIA.
you're-
So they're talking about it in the they're talking about it in the chat, the CIA document here.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets into. Actually, pull up here. I don't see why not. So this is the CIA document from 1983, and it's analysis of the assessment of the gateway process. So this is the process where the Monroe Institute that Zach talks about, and Zach also knows like the techniques to how to do that. So that's something Zach go to, and he's practiced it for I think well over a decade, if not longer, most of his life, I think. And so this gets into breaking down the validity and the reality of the gateway process to pass default mode network through meditation or astral projection or connection consciously to other dimensions.
Right.
And they get into really fascinating, I mean, just statements in here of the factuality of this in 1983. Then obviously as a tool to use as espionage for intel, just within other realms. I mean, they get into like
That's the whole
absolute
thing about.
infinity.
That's like The Men Who Stare at Goats. That was that movie. I
Yeah,
think
man.
that stuff.
Look,
Yeah.
the science is here and the math. What do you think about this? Have you read through this, or are you just
No, I got to read through
understand
it,
it?
but like just off the top,
Look at that.
basically you when you bypass a default mode network, yeah, you can go into crazy different states of consciousness, including things that absolutely feel like astral travel, whether they're imaginal, just like purely your imagination, one thing.
Oh,
But people regularly have the kind of experience where they're seeing themselves from above, or they see the people around them. I've definitely haven't had it myself, where I'm seeing myself.
okay.
You know what I mean?
Hold on just a second. I didn't realize you couldn't see the screen. I should check back. I didn't realize it was a new window, new tab. This is the document, man. This is part of it. I can scroll through it. This is the one from 1983. I just look up the CIA.gov. It's from the actual website off the CIA. This is so one of the diagrams they get into. This is the universal hologram, direction of time space evolving. You got the point where the flow of time space turns towards the opposite pole of the ovoid. Then you get into this is the Fibonacci sequence. These are old drawings, but they get into the Fibonacci 7 wraps of the heart, the compression cycle. They talk
I'm
about the
tripping.
ancient traditions, all the original oral traditions, everything, that when God spoke, there's light, but the spark in the heart is ultimately what it's about. That's our connection to infinite self, to whatever that is. But it's literally through the spark in the heart, then into the blood. I mean, they don't. That's my overlays on it. I'm just saying, but they connect the actual drawing of that, which is fascinating. And they talk about the heart. Is that there's a fascinating mini documentary thing on YouTube. There's a couple good ones. You have to find them, but where the heart is not a pump, it's actually a twisting toroid vortex. And they knew this. They knew this in just medical science, and that's the only way it could work to move the blood the way it does, as far as it does. Like, have you seen where your blood vessels are laid out? They like circle the earth like crazy shit.
So it needs a
And
high pressure.
right. And look, white hole nucleus. That's what they put here. CIA documents, right? This is through all this dynamic. And then connection to the galactic north. galactic south, our galaxy, which is really interesting if you overlay that with astrology, where the position of the stars having a tuning of our specific signature unique frequency heartbeat that, if you think about it, has never ever been before and never ever will be again. It just won't. Right? We're the unique expression of this avatar DNA.
Yeah, they're all individual
I
sounds.
don't know. These are just my thoughts.
That's true. Yeah, that's pretty rad. Yeah, this is that first picture that reminds me of one of the first acid trips I had. It looked like the cover of the Tool album, Anima,
Oh
but it's
yeah.
basically that type of thing, and it was like moving in that type of way, and I was recognizing it, or it was whatever intelligence was telling me that it was doing exactly what was in the drawing there, just like the direction of evolution, things happening, time, space.
Look at this. Look at this. Left hemisphere consciousness grid acts like the mind's computer software to reduce input from right hemisphere to verbal symbols and concepts. Right hemisphere consciousness grid reduces 3 dimensions holographic image to 2-dimensional go fox.
Yeah, and that's like that's metaphor left and right, because it's not like your physical left and right brain if you're detecting it.
Right.
The other way I heard of describing it is the Machiavellian brain and the Erasmian brain being the left and right, because the Machiavellian one is about you, and Erasmian one is about the inspiration and creativity, and just like beingness, you know.
And let's see, that might be back to the one you saw, because I could check this one out, man. Let's make that bigger. Boom. That's on screen. Boom. Perfect. Look at that, guys. Should have done that from the beginning.
Points, distance. Oh yeah, they're writing down their trips, right? They're writing down the things that they're seeing. Yeah.
Look at
This
that.
totally
Energy
makes sense.
oscillation wave. And then right here, which is interesting right here, let's see, clicked out portion of oscillating energy transverse intermediate dimensions, Planck's distance over here, portion of oscillating energy as pattern in space-time, and then clicked, same thing, clicked out portions, exactly the same, no, oscillating energy transversing energy in intermediate dimensions. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But look, they look like compression waves. You go from a longitudinal wave to a compression wave. That's what Dan Winter technology does, and a bunch of other things. From scalar, it's another dynamic, I think, or another way it's often called. But you're in the heart and vortexing it from light, photons, or compressing it into a wave in the heart. There's some point in the heart. All the ancient texts talk about everything in the heart, and the Buddhist texts, and like, I mean, a lot of stuff comes back to the heart, not just metaphorically. Why is it like in everything? In drama about the heart, some way, the heart of a warrior, or the heart of a lover, or the heart
They
of
used to think the brain
anything,
was in
right?
the heart. Yeah, totally. Like the Egyptians thought the brain was in the heart.
Yeah, man. Look at this. What if this is where it's all is? What if this is it? What if we're looking at it? A CIA document they released to the masses. Some people don't care. They don't pay attention. Like, whatever. Don't you think there's fascinating? I mean, this is a general question to humanity, to me. There'd probably be fascinating shit in there. Just because, well, I read it on there, but they never talked about it in the news. I'm like, so why do you need the authority to confirm your own firsthand reading of the documents and putting pieces together for yourself?
Yeah, what this strikes me as is somebody who's tripping and who's like really able to describe what they're experiencing, because this makes perfect sense when you've had like a lot of acid or something in particular. Because
what tell me, break down more of your experience with acid.
Sure.
For you personally, why you enjoy it, or what you experienced
gosh.
on that was beneficial. Articulate, please.
Well, it was the whole, like, I definitely had a whole go with it. I took it kind of a lot, like multiple times a day for years at a time, and pretty big doses too. And
Hold on,
so
multiple times a day. That's right. You and Dak have a similar history in this way. Multiple times a day for years at a time. You said.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then
awesome. No, I'm really awesome. So like, because I've just to do a quick anecdote, and then I want you to keep going. I don't know if we talked about this last time. So I've done it probably half a dozen times now. When I have the consistent mixture or whatever it is, sometimes there's additives or whatever, I'm pretty sure, but it seems to me really clean based on the few that I've had variations. But it's when everything becomes, I would have said before, melty, not melting, melty, but it's really like swirly, right? Fluid. And to me, it's like, even so what we've got on screen, even just the dynamic of seeing the compression from the photonic to the wavelengths at the same time, and my mind goes, oh, this makes so much sense. This feels way better. Like anxiety goes away because it's like, oh, reality is actually like this. Because you're cognitive.
Exactly.
I'm cognitively pretty much there. You know
Right.
what I mean?
I know what you're
It's
talking about, and
different than mushrooms.
this
Much
is
different.
what the Bill Hicks thing where he's saying like young man has to realize matter connects to vibration, slow vibration, or matter's energy, slow
Hold
vibration.
on, hey, go
That's
ahead and
that.
keep chatting. Go ahead and keep chatting. I'm gonna move inside, but
Yeah,
I'm with
cool.
you. I'm just gonna turn off the camera.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but that's what we're talking about in terms of matter just being energy operating at a slow vibration, and that's kind of string theory type of stuff. Like we're sort of looking at string theory a little bit. We're looking at a string vibrating through time. You
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
they're supposed to be two-dimensional entities, and they vibrate in the third dimension. But there's no way to test this. No way to actually get something small
Right.
enough to test this. They just have mathematical models that make it seem like it's at least a plausible idea on some level. So, but
Do you think
that's
though that do you think though even though we don't haven't had modern ways to test it, and that's what I find out so interesting. Also, I mean, because my route into spirituality, if you were to general understanding of much more going on in the earth besides one religion's take on it, if you will, right? But through deep study of that religion, of the Christian religion, of the Hebrew religion, then the Kabbalistic religion, going beyond, because through that progression, which is interesting too, you always find other people on their way out of the boxes. You know what I mean? Like they get to a certain place where they used to think something was that was actually made sense to them because God said it. This was bad. This was good, like eating shellfish. That they just believed it blindly because it was in there. Excuse me.
yeah, totally.
And on some level, I'm saying it's like bad or wrong. You should, as a child, be able to trust. Don't go on the street because they're telling you don't get hit by a
Yeah,
car. They're giving you a good guidance, but there's some things that, and on that's kind of a bad example because on one hand you could prove that shellfish is actually bottom feeding and actually not, not actually healthy for you. But let's just say something like well, let's say killing homosexuals. Let's talk about
yeah,
that one. That's one that's like, that's pretty clear. It's like, come on, you can't just follow rules blindly, man,
yeah, or
because
shaving your beard. Totally. Well,
some written thing
that's
told you to.
like that's back to the authority thing. Like, why if we actually could create a really good authority, you wouldn't need to question it. But it otherwise you should be fucking questioning authority, and if you don't,
Yeah.
you're kind of missing out on life, and your whole life demonstrates that you're not questioning that authority, and you would rather like abuse people in the name of that authority than question it. That's a really like heavily conditioned place for somebody to be in. They don't come out of the womb like that. You know what I mean?
Oh shit, man.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
they're like
saying.
there's
I think you and I we're on the same page. Like, I wanting whatever shape and form, and then there's practical dynamics and political dynamics and trying to figure that out. But like, I don't know if people have thought that far ahead a lot of times. I know in the church when I found the communities that were really good, like I said, they call them covenant communities or covenant friends. Just people that had that actual tighter, much tighter bond and trust because of interactions and time and proven experience of character over time,
yeah,
right?
I mean there's
Trustworthiness and
like
connection. But the people in general don't think about the value of community. They kind of do their job. They go from place to place. Their roommates are their roommates. Their neighbors are their neighbors. But it's like there's not a sense of community and understanding
it,
the value of that to our
oh
own
yeah,
like emotional health, but also like functionality of a society in a much
sure.
healthier way.
Yeah, there's a huge alienation that has taken place under our current system of government and economy and stuff because it's really they call it atomizing, where it just brings out the individual and it de-emphasizes your connection to your family, community, and all that. And so, it's not. We're moving towards a new definition of what that is because, again, as you said, like go back in time, however many 100 years, and your ancestors are probably going to like hate gay people, and if they have a gay child, they're probably just going to honor kill them or something like that, or harass them until they leave.
Which
Uh,
how okay, well, how do you think it got that digressed? I mean, it couldn't have
well,
always been that way. I don't feel like the original cultures did. Somewhere there's some weird perversion that gets in. I mean, I have my own thoughts, but I'm
oh,
curious who yours are.
it's gone throughout time. I mean, because like people will say, one of the books of Paul, he's saying that homosexuality is wrong, and people will argue that he's actually talking about pederasty. Like he's talking about pedophilia.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
and then not just about homosexuality, and because sexuality, like in the Greek world, was just a pretty completely normal thing, depending on where you lived. And like if you were in Sparta, then you were basically in a
The
gay city
I
for
think
men.
the next layer of that of concern, I think for people, is being able to trust that that's not there's enough people in their own the community, right? The close
Yeah,
community that everyone's open, everyone knows each other. That there's not any pedophiles or things in there. You don't want to be that
yeah,
open things. So how do you find the dynamic where, everyone's safe and everyone gets to a place of that level of openness and trust amongst the community?
Yeah, that's tough to do because like people
Right.
who are pedophiles, they might be totally hiding everything that's going on, but
Right.
this stuff just comes out in one way or another. And if we don't have authority structures where people who do have like particularly antisocial sexual habits and desires to to want to get an authority position so that they can
Right.
actually enact their desires, we
So
need
here's
more.
Jordan Peterson. Did we talk about Jordan Peterson? Have you listened to
My
his stuff?
briefly, yeah, I know a lot about him. Yeah,
Have you? So
I've
like sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead and what you're saying. He's
So yeah,
presenting.
he does one of the presentations he does is on shoot, who was it? Is it Marduk? I think it was Marduk or something, where every year what they were supposed to come out and do is make a public display of his worst decisions or something, or like, what was it? I don't know, some kind of like completely owning up to like,
Right.
I don't know. I'm totally butchering it. He did a much better job. But my point is, it's a display like the leader, whatever leadership position there is. There's also it's just one part of the thing you're doing in the community. It's no valuable, and then sometimes it's more critical for a daily function or task or a goal. But everyone's valuable in different ways. Like you say, the people who make the food are more valuable. Well, sure, in a sense, but they're also being relying on the people in the community making other things, providing other things. So there's like, it's just being having that sense of interconnection, not just being
Yeah.
squares and root apartments and boxes next to each other in a building.
Oh, totally. I think this like there's a natural order between humans that gets easily facilitated. Like if you go to work at a place, there's like a normal way that people want to treat each other. But in this current world we live in, you could go work at a totally toxic workplace and it would take you a while to figure it out. We are in a pretty flawed cultural area right now, historically. And as we move towards the future, and it's almost like a purification for culture. Oh, that looks good. Oh
Yeah,
my
dude.
God.
Check this out. Hold on. Let me proper
Chocolate cream
response.
pie.
Proper response, sir. No, just wait. All right, hold on. Let me get this
Okay.
bigger.
Jesus.
Boom. Okay, so this
Jesus.
is this is my sister made this last night on
Oh my God.
Mouthful for Mandy. She's got a channel show on her channel.
Oh yeah, I watched the
And
Beats one. That was freaking awesome. I
oh,
had
right
just
on, yeah.
roasted Beats first time the day before that, so I was like, what the hell?
No shit, man.
Yeah, for real.
Cool. What
Good,
good
cool
synchronicity,
coincidence.
bro. So
Yeah,
like
that's
check this
cool.
out. So this is actually ice cream cake, man. This is like a
What?
pound bun cake or sugar cake, I think. I'm trying to remember. I'm kind of her sous chef or I don't know what it's called, her
Yeah,
assistant
yeah,
chef or
yeah.
some shit. And
Right.
like helping her out. But like and then it's got vanilla ice cream in here. It's got caramel sauce she made and some
Oh,
other crumbles. And then this is whipped cream she made. We made it the night before. So we did one full episode, but we had the first half was playing the
oh,
episode the night before, and then she went live and we did the rest of it. She actually put the frosting on and the bananas. The whole thing is about what to do best,
bananas.
best bruised bananas. That was the recipe. She just
Okay,
came up with this whole thing, man. She's
yeah.
awesome.
I'm gonna watch this one. This looks
Oh, cool that you like that. You
delicious.
like that, man.
Dude,
So yeah, so
that's
I'm getting
great.
your
Dude,
shit
the
for
the
sure.
it was crazy because I roast my beets in the broiler probably like a day before that. And I loved the taste of it. Like even the skin was good to eat. Just a little toasty,
Mm-hmm.
but the best thing I had with beets like that before was it was like yogurt with diced roasted beets with like chives and stuff and
Oh
like
yeah.
super killer.
Yes, yeah. So the stuff my sister made. You're talking about how you liked it
Oh, did
on the
she
video?
make it
Did you
with
try
that?
it?
Yeah, yeah. No,
Oh,
I had actually cooked it ahead of time. Like the day before,
gotcha.
I'd actually cooked my own roast beets because I'm always trying to like roast different stuff in the oven. I learned how to use the
Nice.
broiler, and so I think I'm hot shit now. It works with some things, not with others. Pears
No
is really
doubt,
good.
man.
Broiled
It
pears,
worked.
dude.
It's good.
Yeah, it's like cotton candy jelly. It's really weird if you get it
Oh
right,
shit.
but you got to get it right. It's not that easy. Man, that
Oh
looks
man.
good. I've
Yeah,
actually
it
got to
does.
go too.
I would.
People are.
I'm trying to get this thing back in the freezer, man. I can't even fit it back in there. I'm dead serious. Like, I forgot that it's on this. Oh my gosh, and it's been on screen. I'm sorry, dude.
No, that's
I was
great.
putting it right back, and then like, why can't I fit this? And you were talking, so I
I
was
was
like,
like
oh, that's cool.
zeroing in on the plate there.
Jesus,
I'm like,
my
can I
bad.
taste it from here? Is that
Yeah, no doubt. I was
something
trying
I
to
could
say it
potentially
telepathically,
do?
bro. Hey, you can
If,
just watch me struggle while we're you're kind of exiting out here. Watch me
oh
struggle. Get
man,
this back in the freezer. I cannot get this shit in here.
dude, if
Uh,
I disable my default mode network, do you think I could taste that ice cream cake?
Dude, I'm dead serious. I think all that shit's really. I'm bored with the reality we're living. I'm tired with all the shit. Like, yes, that's the reality I want to live in. I do believe it's true. I think the Monroe stuff helps prove it, man.
See, to me, the reason that the CIA and all this investigated things like remote viewing and all that is because you actually have those experiences, but I just don't think you can actually control it. And I think that's probably where they came up against, because if they could do remote viewing, they could steal.
Oh, you don't know about the other programs? They definitely can. They have remote viewing teams. They've been training for decades because it's not so accurate, because it's infinitely nuanced to each person's experience. And so they get variations of impressions, but when a team of 30 or so trained to do this, they trained to follow their intuition, to not follow their default remote network, but to follow their intuition and the images or the numbers that show up or just whatever, even if it doesn't make sense, they let go of that shit. And then the boss of that or whatever manager, that he actually takes all that info to paint a picture. So they do all these overlays. And it's like boom, and they get super, super accurate information. They've been doing it. That's why it's in the movies and shit. That's super real.
Like, what have they gotten there? What have they actually accomplished with it? What have they divined from using it?
No, they've been using it for military. Okay, so like
what is
an
an operation?
So like what they do is they put one of the teams, and the way they do it, you can find these videos online now, and because it's been released in other CIA documents, whatever. But they'll put numbers, a set of numbers, coordinates for something, not GPS coordinates, just coordinates that's attached to another closed envelope letter with all the details of the mission. So they just give them the numbers. They give if you want to call them the psychics, if you were the trained Monroe Institute, being able to go in this state. It's hard to talk at that angle. Whew, didn't know. That restricts my diaphragm. And so they just give their own impressions, whether it's audio, like they record what they're seeing or perceiving or drawing it out, whether it's numbers or whatever. And so if they're looking for someone, they're trying to find someone, locate someone on the earth, or and then what they put in the envelope too is the intel they have about it already. And so I believe, and so from there they actually get incredibly accurate, like locations to bases, or things, all sorts of practical things you can think of based on what they're trying to look for.
Sure.
By people tuning into this network.
Like the specific usage of this is all just classified, so we can't actually like hear about a specific way that it was used.
I imagine there is declassified a lot of stuff now, because like everything is, but I can't think of anything offhand.
That's documents. Like that's where I'd love to read it. The stories about like the things that they figured out.
Well, okay, operational. Actually, hold on. Duh, that's in that document. Let me just read. If you want to stick around for a second, I can actually read through some of the conclusions they make on here. And that'll answer probably some of your questions. And mine, because they're good questions. Let's just go screen share. Boom.
Boom.
Okay. So get down to the conclusions after all this amazing stuff. Here we go. Set. No. Sorry, guys, we were getting there. So we're going to be worth it. Those different focus states. Yeah, so this document, if you actually read through this, Adam, actually, it's really fast. I learned about this stuff before it came out. When it came out, I just skimmed enough through it. I'm like, yep, I know about all that. Like, that's I've learned about it in a million other ways. Oh, shit.
Yeah, send it to me.
Okay, I'll dig through it. Here we go. Conclusion. That's why we're right at the end, Adam. Go figure. All right. Here, let's see. Is that big enough on screen? Because I can make it bigger.
I just see. Okay, there's perfect. Sound rationalization in terms of physical science parameters for considering gateway to be plausible in terms of essential objectives. Intuitional insights are not only personal, but practical and professional nature would seem to be within the bounds of reasonable expectation. Seem to be. However, a phased approach for entering the gateway experience in an accelerated mode will seem to be required. See, they say "seem to be" a few times. That's very important. Be required if the time needed to reach advanced states of altered consciousness is to be brought within more manageable limits from the standpoint of establishing an organization-wide exploitation of gateway's potential. Most promising approach suggested in the foregoing study involves following steps. Begin by using gateway hemisync tapes. Hemisync tapes, is that a brain wave thing? To achieve
it is, yep, binaural beats.
Right, yeah, there you go. Then add strong REM sweep frequencies. Questions. So they're just doing it this way. Okay, autohypnotic suggestions. Okay, so that's like them still saying generally we think that we can do it if we're able to accomplish a couple of these things that will connect us to our.
So that's why they train them in the teams to be able to do these things autonomously.
That's like what I want to know at this point in time is what did they actually do with this? Because like this could just be a document somewhere that somebody wrote to stay relevant, but if it functions, sure, yeah. But if somebody, because like if somebody did, if they did this program and they
scientifically wise, I mean, I gotcha.
actually for the program itself, because if we're talking about CIA, then we're talking about really political systems, and it's, I mean, there's really interesting stuff about coming out about the CIA's like Chief Poisoner and stuff.
But back then, I don't think so much. I know nowadays
well,
for sure.
The whole time they had to do it where they were making themselves. They just had to go through this. Like MK Ultra didn't make Treadstone agents. You know what I mean?
I got you. I got
didn't. Yeah, that's what it was supposed to do. But so what I'm wondering is, how did they actually take this and apply it? Because if you can remote view and locate people and all that stuff, then there's going to be a story about it, and a story about the operation to go on. Like,
well, there are, because the MK Ultra has its own like 50 sub programs, and then they changed it to like Bluebird, or I don't know. There's several others. It just switched a different program name. So in the documents they released were true and horrifying, but then the thing is that the deception based on other documents that I've seen that have been released, people just don't get directed to them or find them as readily for whatever reason, that they actually did continue on the programs and did create those agents.
That's, I mean, but that's why I'm looking at it like the specific anecdotal level, like how do they actually apply this? Because
well, keep reading here, see what they do even in the studies, or assuming this is true, because so far it makes sense. At least it's what they
fire it over for sure. I'd love to read it, because my general impression is that the CIA considered this really worth study, because you have these experiences. Like, so many people will have like psychic experiences and can know that you're thinking the same thoughts as other people. You know that you have a mind link while you're tripping together. Very common experiences, you know. So these are things that are outside of our scientific boundary, and they lead you to the idea that you could use this to have superhuman abilities like remote viewing. So to me, the most simple explanation is that they did this huge program and tried everything they could and got paid great salaries.
Oh, whoa. You know how we can side skirt this, Adam? You just, like, I was just realizing. So I've done my own practices with remote viewing and stuff, and I've had my own experiences, levels of success. It's nothing in like some critical situation, or like, putting a card up in front of it down the other side of the window, and times of tuning in, like basically how it lays out there in the Monroe Institute, you can get into an intentional state of conscious separation from your body where you can retrieve relevant information for yourself, instead of just like, well, this day, this, like you're talking about, like this day says this day says this. And it's like, well, fucking try it, man. Maybe it's not a superhuman ability. It's an ability we've always been born with. We just didn't know how to activate.
And we just wouldn't when we're thinking in our normal frame of mind. Like, there's a reason why people will trip and yeah, exactly. They'll be like, oh, I act like a pig right now. That's totally that's all part of the picture. But to me, the simplest explanation is just that they didn't come up with anything. I would need to see, like, this is how they used it. Here's like an operation they used. Otherwise, it's speculative, and that's why the C type of thing. That's something that they'll use often in current intelligence to basically reflect that they don't actually know for sure.
Right.
So that's like current CIA, current NSA lingo. I think I do have to go to bed because our roommates are going to sleep.
Okay, let's do that. Here. Thank you. We'll just get back in the light. We'll end the show.
Yeah. Ice cream cake forever.
All done. Yeah, I got my sister's show. Mouthful from Mandy. Ice cream cake.
Yeah, I'm gonna go put that on right now.
Coconut oil. Okay. Cool, man. Thanks for coming on, Adam, and thanks for everyone who's still in the chat. All three people. Awesome.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
And we'll have to continue on, man. It's cool. Just ramble about whatever. And life will go on. I'm sure it'll get crazier. And we'll like, hey, we had some crazy shit happen at the gas station. Like, somebody knocked me out. Whatever.
Hope so, hope not.
Yeah, hope so, hope not. Yeah, that's interesting.
Great chat, man. Thanks for having me on.
You too. Take care.
Peace. Right on.
Bye. Night, guys. Bye.